Hey, lovely people, and particularly a quick word to my American friends who might be tempted to believe what Donald Trump is saying about South Africa, my home country, where I happen to be right now. Him and Elon Musk are racist twats who have no fucking idea what they're talking about. Because what they're doing is taking the word of a fringe racist group called AfriForum and other disaffected whites, disgruntled by the end of apartheid, feeling hard done by, and much like the Israelis, victimizing themselves when they are not victims at all. Bitching about how, land redistribution is racist against whites. These are such ignorant provocateurs, and it's going to backfire on them. South Africans' majority, the black majority, and it's a multiracial, multi-tribal society now, only own a tiny proportion of the land versus the size of their population. And while white South Africans make up 7% of the population, more or less, they own about 70% of the decent land. And so the redistribution of land is to address past inequities, and the vast majority of South Africans agree and understand why that's happening and that it's a good thing. It's also under a very strict mechanism. Now, not everyone agrees, of course, with the mechanism, but the principle is what racists like Musk and Trump are railing against here on behalf of a bunch of assholes who equate equality with oppression, because for so many years, decades and decades of the apartheid era, they were the oppressor. And as we know, whenever the oppressor looks at something like equality, it suddenly becomes oppression of him. So fuck Elon Musk, fuck these idiots from AfriForum. You probably know nothing about them, but this is a bunch of, the equivalent of your kind of Proud Boys hanging on to some past that never actually existed. And a past in which the vast majority of people in this country were oppressed, suppressed, and treated much like, fortunately not quite as badly as the Israelis treat the Palestinians. So this whole railing against South Africa, I'm going to add one more point. South Africans, on the whole, all of us, white, black, Indian, colored, which is not a term, is a specific term for those of you who might get offended by that, a specific racial group. We are very, very resilient people. As a country, we have gone through a great deal, both in terms of the early part and then the transition from the apartheid era to genuine multicultural democracy. And whatever Trump throws at us, we can handle it, because we've been through far, far worse in our history. And my hope is that South Africans all turn around with one voice and tell Trump to fuck off with his sanctions and his fucking withdrawal of aid and his tariffs and all of this stuff, because we can live through it. What I'm not sure about is whether Americans can, because for the most part, all the stuff that Vivek Ramaswamy said recently about Americans being soft, not prepared to put in the hard graft, and all this stuff, I tell you, for the experience of most foreigners is true. And it's not true of every American I know. Some of them are the most hardworking, wonderful people in the world. But as a general principle, South Africans are far more resilient and able to withstand this kind of bullshit authoritarian pressure than any American population. So, to my fellow South Africans, let's stick this out. Let's stick up the middle finger to Trump, and particularly to Elon Musk, because we know from his background that he left South Africa in the apartheid era and retains the racist bullshit that's motivating these people like Creel. And now that I'm in South Africa, I'm seeing their awesome, ridiculous tweets. Fuck those guys as well. They're the past. Most of us are the future, and it's a beautiful future.
My name is Davy Wessels. President Trump, I see a lot of liberals wants to tell you what's going on in South Africa. Well, on ground level, our situation is dismal. And yes, you are correct in your assumption that South Africa is a failed state. We are experiencing a war-like situation with more than 22,000 people being murdered each year, hundreds of thousands of people being affected by crime each year. Thousands of our people and children are being murdered and raped on a daily basis. I'm a boer and farmer, and since the ANC came into power, thousands of white farmers were murdered and tortured to death on their farms. This being actively encouraged by the EFF and ANC. People are dying in state hospitals hallways, waiting for days to be admitted for standard procedures. All the while, the ANC cadre steals the money which is supposed to go to the needy. All state institutions are failing, and the woke liberal DA are the ones signing the expropriation law into power, since they are part of the ANC-led government. The situation is so bad currently that if a loved one doesn't answer their phone, you're immediately worried about what could have happened to them. The woke liberals and the ANC is trying to paint a rosy picture, but if you want our help in your investigation, we will show you the reality on ground level. We already gathered 50,000 signatures in 2 days in support of this message of us, and it is to be handed over in a huge gathering by our fellow Boers and Patriots Saturday the 15th at the US Embassy in Pretoria. This gathering is organized by myself and fellow Afrikaner Willem Petzer. We sincerely hope this message will reach you, and we want to thank the international community for their continued support.
So apparently the Trump administration is going to allow white South Africans to seek asylum because they're mad because the majority black population is standing on business and taking back a lot of the stuff that the white South Africans were able to essentially create on their shoulders during the apartheid state. I wish Americans would just stop this pretense that it's not about brown people. It's about brown people. And I'm so exhausted by it. Because, like, if you could just say that out loud, no one was for this when it was brown people from south of the border trying to escape violence. No one was for this when it was black Africans trying to escape violence. No one was for this when it was brown Middle Eastern people trying to escape violence. But it's white South Africans escaping, getting their, giant pieces of farmland and their mansions taken by the government that they only have because of long-term subjugation. Oh no! Will we please think of the rich whites? You're too loud with the subtext. Just say what you mean. Like, that's the part I'm so exhausted about. Just say what you mean already. Save us all the struggle of, like, having to do this back and forth. Because we already know, you clearly know. Just say the real thing out loud. Say it's about brown people. Say it's about brown people.
Now, how did all this start? President Trump posted on Truth Social saying South Africa is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly. He continued, "I will be cutting off all future funding to South Africa until a full investigation of this situation has been completed." He followed this post up with comments to reporters later in the day. "Terrible things are happening in South Africa," he said. "The leadership is taking away land, they're confiscating land, and actually they're doing things that are perhaps far worse than that." By Wednesday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio posted on X, "I will not attend the G20 summit in Johannesburg. South Africa is doing very bad things, expropriating private property." South Africa is the first country on the continent to hold the rotating leadership for the Group of 20. The foreign ministers from the group of the world's biggest economies are due to meet in Johannesburg at the end of February. The third salvo fired against South Africa came from one of its own, Musk, who was born and grew up in apartheid South Africa. Musk reposted Trump and Rubio's comments about his birth country and added his own, replying to Ramaphosa's statement on X by saying, "Why do you have openly racist ownership laws?" What is Trump referring to? Trump's social media posts and comments were referring to a land expropriation law South Africa passed in January that aims to address the legacy of colonialism and apartheid. While Trump didn't specify which classes of people were being ill-treated in South Africa, he was widely understood to have been talking about the country's white minority. The law has been controversial in South Africa because it allows land expropriation with no compensation in some rare circumstances, including if land is not being used in what the Act calls a productive manner. However, the law does not allow for land to be seized arbitrarily, and there has to be an agreement with the owner. Any land expropriations would still also have to go through South Africa's independent courts. Ramaphosa issued a statement denying Trump's accusations. South Africa is a constitutional democracy that is deeply rooted in the rule of law, justice, and equality. The South African government has not confiscated any land. He also pointed out that Trump's threat about cutting funding has little relevance, saying, "With the exception of PEPFAR aid, which constitutes 17% of South Africa's HIV/AIDS program, there is no other funding that is received by South Africa from the United States."
President Donald Trump just signed an executive order with two goals. The first, to freeze all financial aid to South Africa. The second, to promote the resettlement of Afrikaners in the United States, to escape the draconian policies of the South African government. The Afrikaners of Orania take note of this development, and we are very thankful, specifically for the urgency with which this was tackled in regards to land expropriation and expropriation of property without compensation.
Do you know what Orania is? Let's take a look. Says here, Orania is a white separatist town. So there's a white town in South Africa for whites only. The whites in Orania are thanking Donald Trump for giving them refugee status in America. If you're wondering, why the fuck is Donald Trump inviting white people to America? Let me show you.
7%. That means they don't even have the numbers to keep up white supremacy.
Why do you think that they're panicking at this moment? Why?
Yep. Their numbers in America is nowhere near enough for what they're planning. They're planning something. If you don't know, I believe they're paying people up to $1,000 now, bounty hunters. There's a new slave catchers. But they don't have enough white people for what they're planning. The America they want to create, there's not enough whites. The whites here are not fucking enough. And believe it or not, white women are having too many abortions. That's why they're having the abortion restrictions, because they want to keep their numbers up. But in the immediate, they need to import the most racist group of men and women in the world to America. To understand further context, I've said this in multiple videos. Go look this up. Australia and New Zealand extended an invitation to white South Africans in 2018 for them to come in as part of resettlement. They took back that invitation. They claimed that white South Africans were too racist to function in Australia or New Zealand. Yeah, a group of people who go to Africa and create a town for them only. You think they can function in any other place that is not only white people? But Donald Trump thinks they will prosper in America, and they are coming.
If you found this video informative, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update on the stories that shape our world. This is Adaka Africa, bringing you the geopolitics you need to know. See you in the next one.